Have you ever looked at the grand achievements of humanity, the towering skyscrapers, the global networks, the vast empires of knowledge, and wondered about the very foundation upon which they are built? What is the invisible force that drives us to reach higher, to build bigger, to make a name for ourselves that will echo through the ages? This impulse is as old as civilization itself, a deep-seated desire to rise above our limitations and touch the heavens. But what if that very ambition, that powerful drive for unity and greatness, holds within it the seeds of its own downfall? We are about to journey back to the dawn of civilization, to a dusty plain in the land of Shinar, where a united humanity embarked on the most ambitious construction project in history. The story of the Tower of Babel, found in the early chapters of Genesis, is far more than a simple myth about the origin of different languages. It is a profound and timeless exploration of human pride, the nature of true unity, and the critical difference between ambition that serves ourselves and ambition that acknowledges a higher purpose. This is a story that holds a mirror up to our modern world. The account begins in a world that is almost impossible for us to imagine. Following the Great Flood, humanity was starting anew. It was a single family, a single people. Genesis tells us that the whole world had one language and a common speech. Imagine the power of that. There were no barriers to communication, no misunderstandings born from translation, no cultural divides shaped by different dialects. Every person could understand every other person perfectly. This created a potential for collaboration and collective action on a scale we have never seen since. As this unified people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar, a region in ancient Mesopotamia, what we would now call southern Iraq. It was a fertile, flat land, ideal for agriculture and for building a great city. Here, they made a decision that would alter the course of human history. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." This detail is more significant than it seems. They were not simply using stone, they were innovating. They developed technology, mastering the art of the kiln to create durable building materials, using tar for mortar. This was a testament to their ingenuity and resourcefulness. With this new technology and their absolute unity of communication, a grand idea was born. They declared, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." Let's break down this motivation, because it is the absolute heart of the story. There are two key drivers here, one born of ambition and the other born of fear, and both are centered entirely on themselves. First, the desire to make a name for ourselves. This was not about building a monument to honor God or to serve a divine purpose. It was an exercise in self-glorification. They wanted to create a symbol of their own power, their own genius, their own unity. The tower was to be a testament to human achievement, a landmark that would shout to the world and to the heavens, "Look what we can do. Look how great we are." It was an ambition rooted in pride, the desire to be the masters of their own destiny and the authors of their own renown. The second motivation was the fear of being scattered over the face of the whole earth. This reveals a direct and conscious rebellion against the primary command God gave to humanity after the flood. In Genesis chapter 9, God had blessed Noah and his sons, telling them, "Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth." The divine intention was for humanity to spread out, to cultivate the entire world, to form diverse communities across the globe. The people at Shinar heard this command and decided to do the exact opposite. They wanted to centralize, to consolidate their power, to create a single monolithic society that they could control. Their fear of being scattered was a fear of losing control. It was a rejection of God's plan in favor of their own. They believed that their security and significance lay in their concentrated strength and in the monumental city they would build. They placed their faith not in the providence of God who had just saved humanity from the flood, but in the bricks and mortar of their own creation. The tower was to be their anchor, their fortress against the perceived threat of dispersal and seeming insignificance. So the work began. You can imagine the scene. A vast plain teeming with people, all working in perfect harmony. The sound of shovels digging clay, the roar of the brick kilns burning day and night, the shouts of foremen whose instructions were instantly understood by all. There was an incredible energy, a powerful synergy created by their shared language and shared purpose. The tower began to rise from the plain, an architectural marvel, a ziggurat-style structure climbing step by step toward the clouds. It was a symbol of incredible human potential unleashed. This project was the ultimate expression of humanism without God. It was humanity celebrating itself, trusting in its own strength, and defining its own purpose. They believed that through their collective will, they could achieve anything, even reaching the heavens. This was not a physical attempt to literally break into a celestial realm, but a symbolic gesture. It was an assertion of autonomy, an attempt to erase the boundary between the creature and the creator, to elevate humanity to a godlike status. The biblical narrative then shifts its perspective. It says, "But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the children of man were building." This phrase is a beautiful example of anthropomorphism, speaking of God in human terms. It is not that God was unaware of what was happening and needed to take a closer look. Rather, it signifies a moment of divine attention and judgment. It is the moment when the Creator formally inspects the creation of His creatures, evaluating not just the physical structure, but the motivation and the spirit behind it. And what did God see? He saw more than just an impressive tower. He saw a project fueled by a dangerous pride, a unity based on rebellion against His divine will. The Lord observed, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them." This is one of the most profound statements in the entire story. It is not a statement of fear, as if God were threatened by human potential. It is a statement of divine concern. God recognized that if humanity, in its prideful state, could achieve this, their arrogance would know no bounds. This unchecked ambition would lead them further and further away from their Creator, and ultimately toward their own self-destruction. A humanity that believes nothing is impossible for them is a humanity that no longer sees a need for God, for morality, for humility. It is a humanity that makes itself the ultimate arbiter of right and wrong. God's intervention was not an act of jealous anger, but an act of corrective mercy. It was a necessary disruption to prevent a far greater spiritual catastrophe. So the divine decision was made. "Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other." The very tool of their prideful unity, their single language, would become the instrument of their division. The narrative does not describe a loud thunderclap or a dramatic event. The intervention was subtle, yet its effect was total and immediate. It unfolded in the mundane interactions of the worksite. Imagine the moment it happened. A foreman on the third level shouts down an order for more bitumen. The workers below look up at him, their faces a mask of confusion. The words he spoke, are now just meaningless sounds to them. They shout back trying to ask what he wants, but their own words have changed. They are speaking a new tongue, unintelligible to the foreman and to the crew working just a few feet away. The seamless flow of communication that had made the project possible was instantly shattered. Chaos erupted. A simple request for a tool would be met with a blank stare or the delivery of the wrong item. Instructions would be misinterpreted, leading to mistakes and accidents. Frustration would quickly mount. The shared understanding that had bound them together was gone, replaced by a wall of incomprehensible babble. Trust evaporated. How can you collaborate with someone you cannot understand? Suspicion would begin to creep in. Was that person mocking me? Is that group conspiring against us? The grand, unified workforce fractured. People naturally began to cluster with a few others who spoke as they did, who could understand their thoughts and frustrations. Small linguistic tribes formed amidst the skeleton of their great tower. The spirit of cooperation was replaced by a spirit of division and distrust. The construction ground to a halt. The ambitious project, once a symbol of their unity, now stood as a monument to their confusion. And so, the Bible tells us, they stopped building the city. The project was abandoned. Their grand ambition was left unfinished, a half-built testament to their folly. The place was given a name that would forever commemorate the event. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. The name itself, derived from the Hebrew verb meaning to confuse, became a permanent reminder of the consequences of prideful ambition. The final part of the judgment was the fulfillment of the very thing they had feared. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. Forced apart by their inability to communicate and cooperate, the newly formed language groups migrated away from Shinar. They moved in different directions, seeking new lands where they could build new communities with those they could understand. The divine command to fill the earth was ultimately accomplished, not as a blessed expansion, but as a consequence of their rebellion. The lesson of the tower is profoundly about humility. Humility is the honest recognition of who we are in relation to our Creator. It is understanding that our gifts, our talents, our very ability to think and create, are not of our own making but are given to us by God. The people of Babel lacked this humility. They saw their abilities and their unity as their own possession, to be used for their own glory. They forgot the giver and worshiped the gift. True and lasting achievement is always built on a foundation of humility. Conversely, the story is a powerful warning against pride. In the spiritual tradition, pride is often called the root of all sin. It is the original temptation to be like God, to place ourselves at the center of the universe. Pride takes what is good, like unity, ingenuity, and ambition, and corrupts it by directing it toward a selfish end. The tower was not evil because it was tall. It was evil because it was built with the bricks of arrogance and the mortar of self-worship. The story also forces us to consider the nature of unity. The unity at Babel was a false unity. It was external, based on a single language and a single selfish goal. It was a unity of conformity, a monolithic structure that sought to suppress diversity and centralize power. It was ultimately fragile because its foundation was human pride. When that foundation was shaken, the entire structure collapsed into confusion and division. This false, man-made unity stands in stark contrast to the true, God-given unity described later in the Bible. Centuries after the events at Babel, another pivotal moment in history occurred, the day of Pentecost. On this day, the disciples of Jesus were gathered together, and the Holy Spirit descended upon them. They began to speak in other tongues, and the Bible says that people from every nation under heaven who were gathered in Jerusalem could each hear the disciples speaking in their own native language. Pentecost is the divine reversal of Babel. At Babel, a single language was confused into many to scatter a proud people who sought to ascend to heaven on their own terms. At Pentecost, many languages were miraculously understood as one message to gather a humbled people from all nations into a new community, the Church. The division of Babel was overcome not by erasing languages, but by the unifying power of God's Spirit, which transcends linguistic and cultural barriers. This reveals the nature of true unity. It is not about forcing everyone to be the same, to speak the same language or think the same thoughts. True unity is a spiritual reality. It is a unity of hearts centered on a common love for God and for one another. It celebrates diversity within that unity, recognizing that the different languages, cultures, and gifts of humanity can all be brought together to glorify God, just as the many different instruments in an orchestra come together to create a beautiful symphony. The judgment at Babel, in a strange and paradoxical way, can be seen as a hidden grace. While it was a consequence of sin, the resulting diversity of cultures and languages has enriched the human experience in countless ways. It has given rise to a beautiful tapestry of art, music, literature, and ways of seeing the world. God's scattering of humanity prevented the establishment of a single, powerful, and potentially tyrannical global culture, and instead allowed for a rich and varied garden of human expression to blossom across the earth. This story is not an argument against ambition or large-scale projects. God is not opposed to human achievement. We are created in His image, and part of that image is our creativity, our desire to build, to discover, to improve our world. The Bible is filled with incredible building projects that were commanded and blessed by God, like Noah's Ark and Solomon's Temple. The critical difference is the motivation. Is the project undertaken in a spirit of humility and for the glory of God, or is it for the glory of man? The lesson of Babel is a warning that our greatest strengths can become our greatest weaknesses when they are not guided by humility. The people's unity was their strength, but it was that very unity that enabled their collective pride to reach such a dangerous height. Their technological skill was a gift, but they used it to build a monument to themselves rather than as a tool for good. Any gift, when divorced from its giver, can become a source of destruction. Let's consider some common misinterpretations. This is not a story that advocates for ignorance or a lack of progress. God is not punishing people for being smart or innovative. He is addressing the heart attitude behind the innovation. The sin was not in the baking of bricks, but in the building of a self-made idol. The issue was not the height of the tower, but the depth of the pride in the hearts of its builders. Furthermore, the story does not suggest that global cooperation is inherently wrong. The call to unity is a central theme in the Christian faith. However, Babel teaches us to be discerning about the basis of that unity. A unity forged for economic power, political dominance, or ideological conformity is a modern Tower of Babel, destined to create its own forms of confusion and division. A true and lasting unity must be based on shared values of love, justice, and humility. So how does this ancient story connect to our world today, to our lives in the 21st century? The truth is, we are still building towers of Babel. They may not be made of baked brick and tar, but they are built with the same prideful motivations. Our modern towers are constructed from technology, from ideology, from wealth, and from power. Consider the tower of technological hubris. We often believe that with enough data, a powerful enough algorithm, or the next scientific breakthrough, we can solve all of humanity's problems. We seek to conquer disease, aging, and even death itself. We strive to create artificial intelligence that rivals our own. While these pursuits can lead to great good, they become a Tower of Babel when we believe that technology alone can save us, when we replace faith in God with faith in our own silicon creations, and seek to make a name for ourselves as the masters of the cosmos. We also build corporate and nationalistic towers. Nations and multinational corporations vie for global dominance, building empires of wealth and influence. They seek to make their name the greatest, their brand the most recognized, their power unassailable. This pursuit, when unchecked by ethical and moral considerations, often leads to exploitation, conflict, and a global system where the powerful build their towers on the backs of the weak. The language becomes confused as terms like progress and success are spoken but mean very different things to different people. There is also the tower of ideology. In our increasingly polarized world, we see rigid political and social ideologies that claim to have all the answers for a perfect society. These ideologies demand absolute conformity. They build their towers with the bricks of dogma and the mortar of outrage, creating a false unity among their followers while casting out anyone who dissents. This creates echo chambers where communication with the other side breaks down completely. We speak the same language, but we no longer understand each other at all, a truly modern form of Babel's confusion. Perhaps the most pervasive modern tower is the digital Babel of the internet and social media. It was designed with the noble goal of connecting the entire world, of creating a global village with one common platform for speech. In some ways it has. But it has also become a colossal tower dedicated to making a name for ourselves through profiles, likes, and followers. It has simultaneously created unprecedented global connection and unprecedented social division, confusing our discourse and scattering us into digital tribes that no longer speak the same language of truth or civility. This brings the story down to a deeply personal level. We each build our own small towers of Babel in our hearts. We build them out of our careers, seeking a title that will make a name for us. We build them out of our achievements, our possessions, our reputations. We work tirelessly to construct an image of ourselves that is strong, successful, and self-sufficient. We fear being scattered, being seen as ordinary or insignificant. But what happens when these personal towers inevitably crumble? When a career ends, when a reputation is tarnished, when our strength fails, we experience our own personal Babel. We are left confused, disoriented, and isolated. The story warns us that any identity built solely on the foundation of our own achievements is built on sand. It cannot withstand the storms of life. Our security cannot be found in the height of the towers we build for ourselves. The alternative offered by the story is to redirect our creative and ambitious energies. It is a call to build differently. Instead of building towers that seek to ascend to heaven, we are called to build bridges that connect us to one another in love and service. Instead of seeking to make a name for ourselves, we are called to honor the name of our Creator. This is a fundamental shift in perspective. It means using our talents and our resources not for self-glorification, but for the common good. It means approaching our work, our relationships, and our community life with a spirit of humility, recognizing our dependence on God and on each other. It means seeking a unity that is not based on conformity, but on mutual respect and love, a unity that can embrace diversity and withstand disagreement. This path of humility is not easy. Our world constantly encourages us to build our towers higher, to shout our own name louder. The path of Babel is the path of least resistance. It is far more challenging to lay down our pride, to admit our limitations, and to live for a purpose greater than our own fame and security. Yet this is the path that leads to true and lasting fulfillment. When we feel the confusion of our modern world, the breakdown of communication, the bitter divisions in society, we are hearing the echoes of Babel. These are the symptoms of a world that has, in many ways, tried to build its own way to heaven without God. The story of Babel gives us a diagnosis for our modern ailments. The root cause is pride. The cure, then, is humility. The story invites us to pause in our frantic building and ask a fundamental question. For whom am I building? Is the foundation of my life, my work, my family, my community, based on making a name for myself, or on serving a higher purpose of love and truth? The answer to that question determines whether we are building another Tower of Babel, destined for confusion, or something of lasting, eternal value. The story ends with humanity scattered, but it is not the end of God's story with humanity. The entire biblical narrative that follows is about God's patient, loving plan to gather his scattered people back to himself. It is a plan that does not involve a single tower or a single language, but a single Savior whose arms are stretched wide enough to embrace people from every tribe, every tongue, and every nation. The promise that began with the reversal at Pentecost points toward an ultimate unity, a future where people from the diverse cultures and languages born at Babel will be gathered together. This future unity will not be a return to a single, monolithic culture, but a harmonious chorus of many different voices singing one song of praise, a testament to a God who brings unity not by erasing our differences, but by redeeming them. So the story of the Tower of Babel is not merely a historical account or a children's fable. It is a living parable that speaks directly into the heart of our human condition. It reminds us of our incredible potential for both creation and self-destruction. It warns us that our greatest strengths, when driven by pride, will lead to our greatest failures. It challenges us to examine the foundations of our own lives and our society. Are we building on the shifting sands of human pride, or on the solid rock of divine truth and humility? Are we seeking a fragile unity of conformity, or a robust unity that thrives in diversity and is bound by love? In a world filled with the confusing noise of competing voices, ideologies, and ambitions, the quiet lesson of Babel is more important than ever. It teaches us that the way up is down. The path to true exaltation is through humility. The way to lasting unity is not through building imposing towers for ourselves, but through kneeling to serve one another. The people of Shinar sought to reach the heavens by piling brick upon brick. They failed. The true way to connect with the divine is not by building upwards with our hands, but by opening downwards into our own hearts and allowing a spirit of humility and gratitude to take root. Ultimately, this ancient story is an invitation. It invites us to stop building for our own name. It invites us to recognize that our desire for significance and community is a God-given gift, meant to find its fulfillment not in our own glory, but in a relationship with our Creator and in loving service to our scattered human family. Therefore, as you move through your day, look at the world around you and within you. See the towers being built, both large and small, and let the enduring echo of this story guide your own construction. Build with humility, connect with love, and seek a unity that does not come from the pride of man, but from the grace of God.